Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where today we will be continuing to read Dream Days by Kenneth Grahame. So, let's get going. Summers sicken, flowers fail and die, all beauty but rides around the ring and out at the portal. Even so, Coralie passed in her turn, poised sideways, panting on her steed, lightly swayed as a tulip bloom, bowing on this side and on that as she disappeared. And with her went my heart and my soul, and all the light and the glory and the entrancement of the scene. Harold woke up with a gasp. "Wasn't she beautiful?" he asked, in quite a subdued way for him. I felt a momentary pang. We had been friendly rivals before, in many an exploit, but here was altogether a more serious affair. Was this, then, too, the beginning of strife and coldness, of civil war on the hearthstone and the sundering of old ties? Then I recollected the true position of things, and felt very sorry for Harold, for it was inexorably written that he would have to give way to me, since I was the elder. Rules were not made for nothing in a sensibly constructed universe. There was little more to wait for, now Coralie had gone. Yet I lingered still, on the chance of her appearing again. Next moment the clown tripped up and fell flat, with magnificent artifice, and at once fresh emotions began to stir. Love had endured its little hour, and stern ambition now asserted itself. Oh, to be a splendid fellow like this, self-contained, ready of speech, agile beyond conception, braving the forces of society, his hand against everyone, yet always getting the best of it. What freshness of humour, what courtesy to dames, what triumphant ability to discomfit rivals, frock-coated and moustached though they might be, and what a grand self-confident straddle of the legs. Who could desire a finer career than to go through life thus gorgeously equipped? Success was his keynote, adroitness his panoply, and the mellow music of laughter his instant reward. Even Coralie's image wavered and receded. I would come back to her in the evening, of course, but I would be a clown all the working hours of the day. The short interval was ended. The band with long-drawn chords sounded a prelude touched with significance, and the programme, in letters overtopping their fellows, proclaimed Zephyrin, the bride of the desert, in her unequalled bareback equestrian interlude. So sated was I already with beauty and with wit, that I hardly dared hope for a fresh emotion. Yet her title was tinged with romance, and Coralie's display had aroused in me an interest in her sex which even herself had failed to satisfy entirely. Brayed in by trumpets, Zephyrin swung passionately into the arena. With a bound she stood erect, one foot upon each of her subtle, plunging Arabs, and at once I knew that my fate was sealed. My chapter closed, and the bride of the desert was the one bride for me. Black was her raiment, great silver stars shone through it, caught in the dusky twilight of her gauze. Black as her own hair were the two mighty steeds she bestrode. In a tempest they thundered by, in a whirlwind a sirocco of tan. Her cheeks bore the kiss of an eastern sun, and the sandstorms of her native desert were her satellites. What was Coralie, with her pink silk, her golden hair and her slender limbs, beside this magnificent, full-figured Cleopatra? In a twinkling we were scouring the desert, she and I, and the two coal-black horses, side by side, keeping pace in our swinging gallop. We distanced the ostrich, we outstrode the zebra, and, as we went, it seemed the wilderness blossomed like the rose. I know not rightly how we got home that evening. On the road there were everywhere strange presences, and the thud of phantom hoofs encircled us. In my nose was the pungent circus smell. The crack of the whip and the frank laugh of the clown were in my ears. The funny man thoughtfully abstained from conversation and left our illusion quite alone, sparing us all jarring criticism and analysis, and he gave me no chance when he deposited us at our gate, to get rid of the clumsy expressions of gratitude I had been laboriously framing. For the rest of the evening, distraught and silent, I only heard the march music of the band, playing on in some corner of my brain. When at last my head touched the pillow, in a trice I was with Zephyrin, riding the boundless Sahara, cheek to cheek, the world well lost, while at times through the sand clouds that encircled us glimmered the eyes of Coralie, touched, one fancied, with something of a tender reproach. Its walls were as of jasper. In the long winter evenings when we had the picture books out on the floor and sprawled together over them with elbows deep in the hearthrug, the first business to be gone through was the process of allotment. All the characters in the pictures had to be assigned and dealt out among us according to seniority, as far as they would go. When once that had been satisfactorily completed, the story was allowed to proceed, and thereafter, in addition to the excitement of the plot, one always possessed a personal interest in some particular member of the cast, whose successes or rebuffs one took as so much private gain or loss. For Edward this was satisfactory enough. Claiming his right of the eldest, he would annex the hero in the very frontispiece, and for the rest of the story his career, if checkered at intervals, was sure of heroic episodes with a glorious close. But his juniors, who had to put up with characters of a clay more mixed, nay, sometimes with undiluted villainy, were hard put to it on occasion to defend their other selves, as it was strict etiquette to do, from ignominy, perhaps only too justly merited. Edward was indeed a hopeless grabber. In the Buffalo Book, for instance, so named from the subject of its principal picture, though indeed it dealt with varied slaughter in every zone, Edward was the stalwart bearded figure with yellow leggings and a powder horn, who undauntedly discharged the fatal bullet into the shoulder of the great bull bison, charging home to within a yard of his muzzle. To me was allotted the subsidiary character of the friend who had succeeded in bringing down a cow, while Harold had to be content to hold Edward's spare rifle in the background, with evident signs of uneasiness. Farther on again, where the magnificent chamois sprang rigid into mid-air, Edward crouched dizzily against the precipice face. Crouched dizzily against the precipice face was the sportsman from whose weapon a puff of white smoke was floating away. A bare-kneed guide was all that fell to my share, while poor Harold had to take the boy with the haversack or abandon, for this occasion at least, all alpine ambitions. Of course the girls fared badly in this book, and it was not surprising that they preferred The Pilgrim's Progress, for instance, where women had a fair show and there was generally enough of them to go round, or a good fairy story wherein princesses met with a healthy appreciation. But indeed we were all best pleased with a picture wherein the characters just fitted us in number, sex and qualifications, and this to us stood for artistic merit. All the Christmas numbers in their gilt frames on the nursery wall had been gone through and allotted long ago, and in these, sooner or later excuse me, something got caught in my throat then as I started to speak. Sooner or later, each one of us got a chance to figure in some satisfactory and brightly coloured situation. Few of the other pictures about the house afforded equal facilities. They were generally wanting in figures, and even when these were present, they lacked dramatic interest. In this picture that I have to speak about, although the characters had a stupid way of not doing anything, and apparently not wanting to do anything, there was at least a sufficiency of them. So in due course, they were allotted too. And with that, we come to the end of the episode. Well, the end of the reading and pretty much the end of the episode. By the time I'm done babbling and bumbling around. So yes, I don't know if you could hear the wind throughout that, but it has been quite blustery. But anyway, I will say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.